For Americans, the colors red and blue are deeply linked to the Republican and Democratic parties, but it's really only been that way since the 2000 election. After all, this is what election night results used to look like on American TV.
Victory. Gentlemen, let me tell you this, if they ever teach this machine to talk, you and I, well, we're out of business.
The wide adoption of color television in the late 1960s and 1970s changed all that, but it still would be several decades before the media settled on the color scheme we know today.
What are the hardest states to turn from blue to red, and what are the easy ones?
President Obama has won every one of these blue states.
He has to turn states that have been voting blue.
To understand where this red state, blue state business comes from, let's go back to the very first time a television network used color maps to report election results. That happened in 1972, which also was the first year that a majority of American television households owned color TVs. Each of the big three networks broadcasted their election coverage in color. But here's what CBS did to differentiate themselves from their competition. They created the first color election map in American television history. And just look at Alabama on CBS's map. That oh-so-reliable conservative state, it was colored pure Republican blue. No, your eyes were not deceiving you. The states that Republican Richard Nixon won that night in his 1972 landslide victory were colored blue on the CBS map. CBS's great broadcast innovation would soon inspire the other networks to introduce red and blue maps to their own election night broadcasts. For its part, CBS would keep the Republican blue and Democratic red scheme through the 1980 election.
For Reagan, well, it's a different story. They're shown in blue, and this country is almost solidly in the Reagan colors tonight.
Those pairings may seem odd today, but they weren't back then. That's because blue, as NPR's Ron Elving has noted, was a color closely associated with the Union Army, led by Republican Abraham Lincoln. Red, on the other hand, was a color associated with leftists and left-leaning parties throughout the world, as it is today. In fact, NBC's 1976 election chief told the Smithsonian Magazine that it was British Tory blue and Labour Party red that influenced NBC to go with this color scheme for 20 years.
You can see to look like a suburban swimming pool over there.
Walter Mondale, the winner of the state of Minnesota, colored red tonight. For Walter Mondale, it is shaping up as a George Bush map as we look at it back there.
It certainly is, Tom.
He goes into the Clinton column after having voted with the Republicans the last 3 times. And as you can see, we color in the state of Kentucky.
ABC News, on the other hand, had its own state color logic.
Red states are states that we have projected having gone for Mr. Reagan. Red are Reagan. That's why we chose red.
By 1996, ABC and CBS had used the now familiar Democratic blue states and Republican red states on their maps over several election cycles. So NBC decided to make the switch too for a very simple reason.
NBC decided to adapt the same color pattern as ABC and CBS so as not to have a confusion for the viewers.
But it wasn't until the 2000 election that the political concept or term red state versus blue state took hold. On that election night, the network anchors and pundits relied heavily on the colored maps to explain how close the race was between George W. Bush and Al Gore. Very soon, those red states and blue states that the country saw over and over again on TV became rooted in American culture. David Letterman was one of the earliest cultural figures to pick up on this just a few days after the 2000 election.
Candidates have worked out a compromise, and thank God not a minute too soon. Here's how it's going to go. George W. Bush will be president for the red states. Al W. Gore will be president for the blue states, and that's the best we can do.
Those same television maps would also help make red state and blue state a popular term among political pundits and newspaper headline writers. It was useful shorthand as memories of the 2000 election were burned into the American psyche. Over time, the term came to mean not just the states that voted for Bush and Gore, but also a way to describe the cultural values associated with American electoral geography. All this was not lost on then State Senator Barack Obama when he addressed the DNC in 2004.
The pundits like to slice and dice our country into red states and blue states. Red states for Republicans, blue states for Democrats.
But come election night in 2004, the term, the coloring, and the maps still stuck. Now you can see the red and blue terminology all over the place in American life. It's in modern party iconography, it's in the names of consulting groups, in coffee brands, and even at this Kentucky barbecue joint.
Red State Barbecue.
There's even a color now for states that could vote either Democratic or Republican. And while many may lament the divisions that the terms have brought to the country, maybe they should look on the bright side. At least it inspired CBS's Harry Smith to record this amazing song.
I'm from a red state.
I'm from a blue one.
We met in the middle and don't see eye to eye. She's a bleeding heart.
Yours is made of stone.
Sometimes I wonder how we get by.
But when the talk turns to love,